Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Paul Campbell, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tito. Tito is a web application for selling tickets online, as you know. We've been going for a while now, first as a side project for a few years, from 2011 to 2015, and then as a business from 2015 for the past 3 years. We're based across the road here in Dublin, and I went to college just down the end of Dame Street at Trinity. I've noticed that the talks here seem to have things like a lot of numbers, and they have a lot of qualifications. I do have one qualification from Trinity, from the School of Mental and Moral Science. Seriously. Some of you may know that as philosophy. And one number that I want to give you is my office is 200 steps away from the door of this building. I do have some numbers just to back up where we are as a business that you might be interested in, but this is basically going to be just a simple talk with a simple message and no numbers, diagrams, analytics, or whatever. So our first year servicing customers was 2013. And we processed about $1 million worth of ticket sales that year, and we made 0 in revenue. Since then, in the last few years, we've processed a bit over $450 million for conferences worldwide, with about $80 million of that last year. And last month was the first ever month in our history that we crossed the threshold, so that we're now projecting €1 million in revenue for the next 12 months. And we have 10 employees. So that's where we are as a business. It's a product with a little over 2,000 active daily users and over 400 monthly customers. We have about 2,500 customers overall, but they're seasonal, so we might service different conferences when they're on or selling. So when I started working on Tito, I only had a sense of what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be simple, easy to use, and making use of modern technology. That I was sure of. I didn't want to raise tons of money or VC, doing all that on a wish and a prayer. I didn't want to do anything that felt icky. I wanted to treat customers with respect and raise money from those customers and not from investors. But I'm guessing that, like a lot of folks, I just dove in and built the product without really thinking about it, or without defining principles behind those things that I wanted it to be, or I didn't want it to be. For quite a few years, the team was just 3 of us: myself, my co-founder Doc, and our other engineer Killian. We had a few folks come and go, but basically the team was very small. And it felt like our values were aligned, even though we never specifically agreed on what those values were. We liked similar things, we disliked similar things, and when something felt icky, it felt like a shared feeling. But as we added team members, and we're still a small team, problems began to appear. In my mind, I expected everyone to just do good work. That just felt like so obvious and self-evident. But that might work in a small, contained situation, but it meant that if the work wasn't good enough to this hidden standard that Doc and I set, then the criticism would feel very personal. So last summer, all 10 of us sat down to discuss what these principles ought to be. We went back and forth about how we wanted to provide a great customer experience. We wanted to build a product that customers loved, and we wanted to delight people. Delight seemed to be the word that we shared that kept coming up over and over. So we hung on to that, and we came up with this idea of Tito brings delight to event experiences. And this was a step in the right direction. And at the very least, it helped us a little bit to be a little bit more consistent in how we all talked about the company. But something was missing. And it took a little bit more serendipity to coax out a more cohesive set of principles that would help us have a shared vision. So in January, we started a series of formal conversations with a strategist and diversity and inclusion advocate called Kim Creighton from Atlanta. So we wanted to address some of these problems that we might face as the company grew. So the first assignment was a series of conversations where we would do some visualization. And without any constraints, Doc and I, we were asked to visualize the perfect form of what we wanted Tito to be. From whatever angle we wanted it, basically projecting the future, what was the perfect manifestation of Tito. So we both wrote down independent descriptions of what we thought Tito could be. We both wanted to be a great company, a great product, good looking, performing really well, with customers' needs fulfilled. And we both had a set of very practical requirements that we both thought we could do a better job on. The next step, though, was a bit more fundamental. Kim went through what we'd written, and she pulled out key phrases and ideas that both of these descriptions shared. From there, she asked us to prioritize the words and phrases that resonated. So we were able to pull out the ones that we felt most strongly about and combine others into words that had broader meaning. So we took things like customers feeling looked after, trustworthiness, honesty, respect, transparency, and we distilled those into a single core value that is truly universal and almost maybe cliche, but it was just this idea of integrity. We took words like quality, impressive, best in class, these things that we wanted to be, and distilled that into the notion or principle of excellence. And finally, things like feels like magic or heightened experience or vibrant, we distilled into what we had originally come down to, which was delight. Integrity, excellence, and delight. And suddenly, all of those criticisms or those problems from before, they felt so obvious because we hadn't given anybody any yardsticks by which to measure what they were doing. And now we had just simple key words that summed up how we were going to judge work and future. And what I've enjoyed about these principles is that they are interdependent. And they build on each other. And it doesn't start from delight. Integrity by itself is probably the most valuable. It leads to trust, and trust holds the whole show together for me. And it's always been the basis, and it's been a real relief to discover that. Integrity informs not just product decisions, but how to react in certain circumstances, particularly when things go wrong. But that can only take us so far. We can be straight-laced, and we can be honest, and we can be transparent, but we still need a great product. And we still need a set of processes to back up that product. Without those, we wouldn't really be a business. Excellence and a commitment to excellence is about producing quality consistently. Finally, integrity plus excellence, that should put us on the path to a solid moral and ethical basis and having a quality, functional product. But it's my belief that we should leave people feeling something more fulfilled. We should be able to bring something more to people's lives. And that something more is always going to be hard to define. But we can see it when people use our tools and they feel maybe joy or fulfillment, delight. So putting integrity first, it seems like such an obvious thing to do. It seems so obvious. But we all know that it's often the first principle to be compromised when it comes to product design. A designer might say, oh, but that will be annoying or it will sell more. But integrity means putting the customer, the user, the person who's using your software first. It's very much a long-term play. So an example from the last year where I felt like we sort of sat on this integrity principle was the scramble last year to get prepared for GDPR. We have about 21,000 emails in our user database. And I don't know if you remember, but every week we were getting all these emails to get opt-in so that we would have permission to email you. So we thought about how we would address this. And all these emails were coming in, and I was trying to think, like, what were we getting opt-in for? We had never actually emailed those people, and we didn't have plans to email them, but we wanted opt-in in case we wanted to send them junk in the future. But it just didn't seem like a solution. And under GDPR, we were able to send them product updates or whatever in the future. But why send an email getting opt-in for something that we weren't ever going to do? So we never emailed anybody, and people's inboxes from Tito were empty. And in the year since, we haven't sent them any further email for any marketing purposes. And that's not to say that we will never email people, it's just that we haven't. We respect people's time, we respect their privacy. The other side of the coin is that we have 3 million emails of ticket holders in the system, and we never have and we never will email those people because they're not our emails, they're our customers' emails. And so we never went looking for any opt-in there. But it was just, when it came to the decision-making process, integrity, and our own integrity came first. Excellence is much more difficult to live up to than integrity. It's not about 1 or 2 moments of greatness. And as has been attributed to Aristotle, the pursuit of excellence is a habit. And there's lots of shades of grey trying to achieve it. Excellence is tricky because it straddles the pursuit of a process or a method that is repeatable, but also allowing ourselves the ability to do creative things and have freedom to do things in interesting ways. For me, a large part of that is the ability to say no up until the point I can say, yes, we're going to do this right. There are loads of examples in our app where we've fallen short. It's so easy to fall short. But there's one example that I think we're starting to get right. I'm talking about date pickers. Date pickers are usually awful. And I don't think any app I've ever used has really come close to solving what I would have thought was a simple problem. They're the usual kind of lazy developer drop-in tool where the developer just picks the date picker from whatever JavaScript framework they're using. They usually suck because I like to type a date. I like to type 1 Jan and the date just fills in. And then maybe use the UI to refine it if I need to, but ultimately I want to be able to edit what's in the little text box. Believe it or not, Tito, being an event management and ticket selling tool, we have never had a date picker in all of the 8 years. And yet we managed to get to €1 million in revenue. It is possible. For the next release, I went back and I built a new date picker from scratch that handles 2-way input. I was like, this is how it should be, and I'm going to spend the time to make it as I think it should be. You can type into the text box and the UI updates. You can change the UI and the text box updates. It seems so simple. It's wonderful. You might say, I think it's delightful. Whimsy, personality, effervescence, character, tone. All of these are the things that I think of when thinking about software that delights. When we originally settled on delight as the thing we wanted to strive for, looking back, I can't say it didn't feel that something was lacking. Once we isolated our core values, it struck me, playfulness only works if the basics are right. The basics for us are good, ethical behavior and solid functionality, integrity, excellence. But delight is what folks are left with. Delight is the feeling that people have after they stop interacting with you. An example not specifically from our software product, but from a conference we hosted for our customers last September in Chicago was called Admission. Ironically, given that we're a company that helps people sell tickets, we didn't sell very many tickets. And so we were faced with a choice to cancel the event and give up, or we could do something to make the smaller event a bit more special for the people who did go. So we did decide to go ahead with it. We booked a smaller, more intimate venue. We sent cars to go and pick people up from their hotels. We arranged a private coffee morning at Intelligentsia HQ in downtown Chicago. The talks went ahead and we recorded them and we shared them later. After the day of talks, we brought everyone on a boat trip of Chicago, just for fun, because it was special. And at the end of the day, we turned the venue into a dining room and had a private dinner for everybody for an unforgettable, delightful experience that I think the people who went will never forget. So going back to software, a lot of the software that we use can tend to be dull. It will serve a function, and we judge it on the whole by how well it does its job. Sometimes we do use a piece of software that leaves us with something that we can't describe, something a little bit more than just taking an input and getting an output. And getting that right is really, really hard. It's so easy to try to be clever or magic, and that can lead to frustration. But if we view delight not as the core of our app, but something to layer on top of a really good, solid foundation of principle, excellence, and a layer that we can affect people's lives in subtle ways, then it's possible to do the job and also leave folks feeling joy or completeness, delight. And so, what's the point of all of these thoughts? Integrity, excellence, delight. Do good work for a good reason, and try to make it move people, try to add to people's lives. And these are the principles that we've chosen as we build our tool and our team and our business. Software by its nature is ephemeral. No software is ever complete. And new solutions to problems, they appear almost as quickly as we solve the ones that we're solving. The half-life of usefulness is so quick for software. And what are we left with when the software we work on will be defunct in years or months or even weeks? This is when I think it's most important to have and define strong principles. Because long after our software is gone, it will be the principles behind why we built it that endure. The active daily users may reduce to zero, MMOR might have all but dried up, and engagement is just no longer relevant. But what won't go away is the impact that what we build has on the lives of the folks who got to use it. So that's my modest appeal. Before you open your code editor, or your design tool of choice, or your analytics package, just take a pause. Have a think about the things that are important to you. Maybe do an exercise like we did, or maybe just write a few things down. We spent so much time worrying about what we're building and what to build next. And for a moment, hopefully a positive one, I would urge you to consider why. Thank you very much.